Once I started the Buteyko method, the improvement was very quick.
Highly nice to see
Hi,
you.
Martha.
Today, we're going to talk about the benefits that you've seen from your practice. Tell us something about how you came to this, or why you decided to do this method.
Well, I've been on a quest for decades to try and find a solution to my chronic migraine problem and kind of tried everything really. And then I just heard Christopher Drake talking to James Dellingpole about the Buteyko method. When I first heard the title of the interview, first of all, I thought it was some type of kung fu or something, Buteyko. And so I switched off. I thought, I'm not interested in that. And then I heard a little bit about it, and it was about breathing. And I thought, been there, done that. Did loads of yoga and relaxation breathing exercises. But by accident, I ended up listening to it because we were on a journey that we didn't expect. And it was one of the only podcasts that we had downloaded. And so we listened to it. So it was so fortunate that I came across it, because if that hadn't happened, I would have bypassed it, or it would have bypassed me. I thought about it for a while. I thought, I reckon there's something in this, because my migraines always start, nearly always, 99% of the time, they start in the mornings when I've been after sleeping. As soon as I wake up, it switches on just like a switch going on. And I thought, could be something to do with my breathing. But I was quite fascinated because I watched a video about it before I joined a workshop. It was quite counterintuitive to what I'd always learned in the past. Found it really interesting. The workshop was really good.
We have a measure for breathing. What was your measure when you started the workshop?
It was 8 seconds.
8 seconds is breathing for 8 people. The optimal control pause is 60 seconds. So there's a big difference between 60 seconds and 8 seconds. So that, you were actually in a really difficult situation. And how often did you have migraine?
They start about 5 out of 7 days a week. And I ended up taking medication about 2 of those days, because I found various ways of managing it and aborting the attack. But I would take a triptan drug twice a week, which was horrible, really. It got rid of the pain, but had horrible side effects. I felt like it was, you got a rebound effect as well. So once you start taking them, it's harder to kind of, I say twice a week, but that was kind of on average, because sometimes I'd have to end up taking medication 4 days in a row. And you just feel so tired and horrible. Anyway, once I started the Buteyko method, the improvement was very quick. I had a big gap where I didn't have to take any medication for about 20 days, I think it was, which is massive for me. It was so good. I always think that it's going to, I'm not going to get away with it forever. And I did get one, and I took medication, but I spoke to you and was encouraged. And obviously you've got to be realistic. I've had these since I was 19, so it's a big change. But I've been doing the technique since the beginning of January. So this is
just over 2 months you've been practicing. So
yeah.
You've got 20 days without any medication, then you had to take the medication at some point.
Yeah. And altogether, in all this time, I've taken the triptan drug 4 times. So that's 4 times instead of potentially, that's 16 times would have been on average in 2 months. I would take that. So that's a massive improvement. And it is disappointing when I tip over the edge and I have to take something, but you've got to be realistic. And obviously I'm in a process, and what I can do with the technique is improving all the time. And I had a big jump forward about a week ago when something changed and I was managing to do a lot more not by straining at it, and it just happened. I was really surprised, and it was really satisfying because it was quite hard work to start with. Well, you have to set aside quite a lot of time to do it.
Yeah, and at the
And
beginning, with a control pause of 8, it's actually quite difficult to get the pauses up,
uh-huh.
usually. Whereas you're finding now that they're not quite so difficult to grow.
No, and it's encouraging when I do the control pause is 23, 25, sometimes 30.
Mm-hmm.
It's a massive jump without any effort. And it's very strange because you don't expect it, because you think, why should your body react so differently just by doing this? Just by shallow breathing and restraining your breath. And it's just strange that it does it on its own. But I understand that it's something to do with the autonomic nervous system. Like it's a process that you can't control consciously. So your brain just does it, and it's kind of in a practice loop of doing it one way, and you're changing it over time.
Well, you're recalibrating your brain sensitivity to CO2, and it
Yes.
gradually becomes less resistant. And all the process that you've been through over the last 2.5 months, the change to your metabolism because of the level of CO2 going up, has led gradually to your practice becoming easier because the resistance from your respiratory center is less now. So
Yeah.
as it's less, then your breathing is shallower.
It's very rewarding because I had the reward of having less migraines straight away and other things as well. But just the achievement of like suddenly the control pause going up, a lot. It was just like, oh, that's really interesting that the mechanism is kind of working.
Yeah.
And it obviously motivates you to carry on. I find it okay now that I'm adjusted to remembering to stop and practice the breathing at regular intervals. But when you get an extra reward, it spurs you on. And it's just fantastic to find something that actually works after all these years.
Yeah, migraine headaches appalling. But one of the things I've been really impressed with you is that you've actually many times now managed to reverse your way out of a migraine using the practice.
Mm-hmm.
Been very successful at that.
Yeah, I found a lot of the time, if I just do the shallow breathing, because sometimes I can't hold my breath if the pain's reached a certain level, but it's absolutely fantastic. The first time it happened, that once I'm at a 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 stage of pain, nothing will stop it apart from the triptan, and sometimes that doesn't even work at that stage. And I've had to learn how far I can let it go before I do something. And I was sort of taking a chance the first time. I think I'd been talking to you on a video, and it was about 7 out of 10, and I thought I've got to go and take something, but I didn't. I just went and did the shallow breathing, and I thought, it's actually going. I feel it lifting. So the more times I've done that, because it's so psychological as well, because you think, oh, it's not going to work, and you panic. But if you think, oh, it's worked before, it can work again. It gives me more confidence, and it makes me feel less kind of anxious that it's not going to work, and I can risk it. I can risk the pain, because you are, like you say, it's terrible pain, and
horrendous.
You don't want to kind of let yourself in for going so far that you can't come back from it. So it's a fine tuning it really to know how far I can let it go. But as I say, with each time when it's stopped, it's such a good feeling. It really is, because it feels like I'm in control of it rather than it being in control of me, which is horrible.
Yeah. Well, I found that I would test it out. It would be shallow breathing, and then I'd start doing some easy pauses with it, just taking a pause up a little bit, past the control pause, and more shallow breathing, and gradually grow the numbers up. And I found when I got to 60, then I could get rid of it. So sometimes it was just shallow breathing, but I could also get rid of it quite quickly by getting my pauses up.
Really, I feel like I'm putting pressure on my head when I hold my breath.
Yeah, well, you're not strong enough yet, because you've been getting out of a control pause of 8. I think over time, when you start to cleanse it out, which will be around control pause of 30, when you've got a stable control pause of 30, you'll be cleansing it out. You will be able to apply pauses to it. And when you're stronger, you'll be able to do steps with it. Sometimes you'll be able to do steps as well as sitting pauses. But when it's very inflamed, shallow breathing is the way forward. Or control pauses and shallow breathing are good too. Just, easy pause and shallow breathing, just to get a little bit of air hunger. But certainly you've managed to get out of those long days of agony. I used to be someone that had to be in a dark room for 48 hours.
Well, I did until I just got, I was given this triptan drug, and it was one that they don't tell you about, in that it was one you could take when you'd eaten, because a lot of them, if you've eaten something, it doesn't work, the hard pill. This one dissolves on your tongue and you can eat with it. So before I had that, I would, it was just awful. I could be in bed for like 3 days at a time. Not since I've been doing Buteyko, but before, if I let it go too far and the triptan wouldn't work. It's a strange mechanism, really. It's a mystery. Although it's not such a mystery now, because it seems that it's to do with CO2. One thing that was really interesting was, and the process had the ring of truth about it. When I watched one of your videos, you said to somebody, if you've been with people. Now, I used to think that I would get a migraine sometimes when I'd been in a busy social environment. I thought it was anxiety that was giving me the migraine. It wasn't. It was because I was talking a lot and not breathing. So all that time I was thinking, oh, I'm an anxious person. Or I'm over anxious, and I wasn't at all. I was just breathing wrong all the time, because I didn't feel anxious, but I had the symptoms of anxiety, and it was to do with the breathing. It wasn't anxiety. It was, I'd misdiagnosed it, if you know what I mean.
Well, we do. We don't know what the cause is, so you start trying to work it out according to your experience. And someone like me, who had to talk all day long, by lunchtime I was finished. And I used to drag myself through the afternoon and then drag myself home and collapse for a day. And then start again a day later, start talking again. By lunchtime I was exhausted, and it was the mouth breathing that did it. So what are the other benefits? Well,
it does sort of promote a calmness. It slows you down. It slows your thinking down a bit. I mean, in a good way. So you don't, I tend to sort of, my butterfly brain, I'm very sort of busy, active thought processes. So it calms me down. I was getting a lot of aches and pains after exercising, like gardening or anything. Really, the sort of thing that people go on about as you get older, you get these aches and pains. That was very recent. That was like last year that started, but that's gone. So that was very noticeable, because I remember when I did some gardening for the first time, like about 5 hours, like straight, I thought, oh, I'm going to pay for this tomorrow. And I didn't at all. I didn't have any aches and pains. That was really interesting, It obviously shows that your cells are working in a different way. They're kind of servicing what you need to do in the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah, well, they're delivering oxygen. The oxygen is being delivered to your cells, so your breathing in your cells is working better.
It was so noticeable and so good, because it gives you more confidence that you can do tasks that you want to do, and you're not going to sort of be put off doing things because I can't bother, I'm going to be exhausted, that kind of thing. The other thing is my sleeping is so much better. It's extraordinary. And I know that's what Christopher says about sleeping for too long and stuff like that is not good for you. But I think I was chronically tired because the migraine, obviously, that disrupts your sleep, because often it would wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That was sort of standard time, 4 o'clock. So I was just tired for years, really. And the medication just makes you feel tired. So now I get really nourishing sleep. I do wake up, and I, from what Christopher said, it sounds like it's a good thing to kind of have a break from your sleep in the night, and I get back to sleep absolutely fine. So I feel like I'm not fatigued and tired all the time. I've noticed other things, like my eyes are clearer because they were quite yellow. The whites were yellow before. That was something I just noticed recently. And I think that, again, it was like adrenal fatigue and some sort of effect on your liver. And so that's gone. And also my skin is clearer. Weirdly, sort of impurities that I used to have around my nose, they're all gone. It's really interesting to see all these different things that are happening. But then again, they wouldn't they? Because it's affecting your whole body. So you're going to have all these different things that are going to, it's an interesting thing unfolding.
Yes, it's fascinating. All the changes unfolding.
Yeah.
And all kinds of things that you weren't necessarily expecting.
No, not at all. But nice things that are told that will happen in the future by sort of carrying on with it. I'm looking forward to this as well.
What about that sense of unconcern you mentioned earlier?
I'm letting go of things that were pulling me down, making me feel sad. And I don't know. I think it could be things that are changing in the wider sphere. That things are kind of, there's new knowledge emerging, if you know what I mean. That's cheering me up, making me feel more optimistic for the future. I see no reason to think that this technique won't help with mood and all sorts of things, because hormones and stuff are going to be affected, and as time goes on, there'll just be more of a sense of balance about things. It won't be sort of peaks and troughs so much. It'll be more sort of steady.
Yeah, there won't be so many swings.
Yeah, because when I started, I could go up and down like that in the course of a day. So it's be interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah, you've made great progress in 2.5 months. Really, it's been very impressive. So thank you for talking about this.
Well, thank you, Martha. I'm glad I found you.
Well, I know. I mean, migraine headache is unbelievable.
Mm.
The inflammation in the brain, it's just a killer. So acute. So me too. I'm very grateful I found it, because I don't have migraine anymore. I know you're still working with it. It doesn't happen so often, and when it does happen, you can get rid of it quicker, and it's an ongoing thing. But once you get your control pause past 30, 35, unless it's a cleansing reaction, you're just not going to have migraine.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes. But you do have to, the thing is about it is you have to work with it. The way you've worked with it, you have to work with it. And it's fantastic. Yeah. You're doing the job. And I'm hoping it's going to inspire other people to stick with it.
I know people get migraines occasionally, or, from time to time, but mine was extremely chronic. I don't work now, but working was so difficult, and social things, plus the fact you never know what's going to happen, and worrying that it's going to spoil social occasions. And I mean, I had one on my daughter's wedding, but I took triptan and it went, and you just kind of plow on and get on with it, sort of thing. And it's been difficult, but I kind of got to the stage where I thought I'd never find anything, and this is wonderful. It's really good in lots of ways. One of the most wonderful things about what's happened since I've started practicing Buteyko is that to wake up in the morning without a migraine starting, which is happening quite regularly now, that I wake up with a clear head, it is just such a good feeling. Because normally I just have to get up, however I feel, go and do whatever I can to stop it. But to wake up and not have to do anything, you just lie there and just enjoy the coziness of being it, and without a headache, is just one of the best things. It's so nice. That alone is just such a massive bonus.
You've actually many times now managed to reverse your way out of a migraine using the practice.